Today is September the 11th, 2015. My name is Tanya Finchum, and along with me is Madison Warlick, and this is part of our Cowboy in Every County project, and we're with Oklahoma State University, and today we are in Dewey, Oklahoma, which is in Washington County, to visit with Mike Clark, so thank you for having us today.
Thank you.
Let's begin with having you tell us when and where you were born.
I was born March 8th, 1986 in Stillwater, Oklahoma.
Oh, you're our hometown boy.
Mm-hmm.
And what did your parents do for a living?
My father was a pharmacist. He was a pharmacist at Central Drug Store in Stillwater for 25 years. My mother worked for Seat Support Services at Oklahoma State in the engineering department.
Okay. Do you have brothers and sisters?
I have one brother. His name is Tim Clark, and he is 32.
So a little
He's a little older, 3 years older. Yeah.
And did you grow up in the town of Stillwater?
I did. I grew up in Stillwater. We actually lived in Perkins for a few years until about first grade. Then I guess I was about 6. Then we moved up to Stillwater, and then from then on, I grew up in Stillwater. Mm-hmm.
So which elementary school did you go to?
I attended Skyline Elementary School, which is on the north end of Stillwater, a little bit north and east, and went there. Can't think of the years right now, but when I was young.
And did they have the middle school then, or did you go?
They had middle school, yes. So they had the middle school then, and so we would go through 5th and 6th and 7th grades at middle school, and then we went to the junior high over by Skyline for 8th and 9th. Mm-hmm.
And then back to the high school.
Then back to Stillwater High
So
School.
what year did you graduate from high school?
I graduated high school in 2004.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
a little 10 years ago. Did you have a favorite subject?
Not particularly. I spent a lot of time in band. Spent a lot of time in the band. As it came from subjects, not so much. They were all schools, so none of them interested me or disinterested me any more than any others. So most of the time I was in the band.
And what instrument did you play?
Played trumpet. I played trumpet for a long time. I played trumpet from when they started us playing trumpet, which would have been middle school all the way through high school. I went through my senior year.
And once you graduated from high school,
I went to OSU.
you went to
I went to Oklahoma State.
by choice?
By choice. I actually wanted to. It was my only choice. Also, I just barely passed the ACT. I had to take the residual ACT at OSU, and that's how I got in. I do not believe today I could have got in. I think the ACT requirement is higher than when I did. So I went to OSU, and I did not live at home. My parents were adamant that I should move into the dorms and have that college life away from mom and dad. So I moved into the Kerr. I moved into Kerr Hall on the 11th floor, and started my college career then. I think at that time I was a graphic arts major in my first semester, and I learned very quickly that I cannot draw. I cannot draw to save my life. So that began a number of changes of majors. I think in the end, by the time I actually graduated, I think I had changed majors 7 times. I graduated in 2009, so it took me 5 years.
So what was your major finally?
I graduated with a degree in history. I had the most credits in history, so it was, do you want to graduate now or do you want to graduate in another year and a half? So I graduated with a degree in history.
And what were you planning to do with that degree?
Well, really, that story is a little longer. The reason I had more credits in history is in 2006 my father passed away. I actually had an easier time with the history courses being able to read the book, study for an essay, and take a test than say something like an engineering course where there would be weekly mathematical things, and because there were some weeks when I really couldn't function and there were some weeks when I could. And so history became one of those classes that I could take my time in, make a decent enough grade, and graduate with it in 5 years or so. So that is more why I was originally a journalism broadcasting major. I was told I had a voice for radio. Some people said a face as well. But I was in structures and styles at the time when my father passed away. And it was the second time I took that class. And there was just no way I could keep up with that sort of rigorous, ethical, and study that the journalism majors go through. Then I stepped back to a slower pace.
Did you have some advice or good guidance in at OSU to help you make that decision, or?
That I did in the end to actually get the degree. At the time, they just wanted to make sure I made it through. I really wasn't advised for or against any particular major. They wanted me to find my way and say, what are you interested in? At that time, I was interested in just getting a degree, which is going to sound a little bad, but it was important to my dad. It was important to me. So sticking in, regardless of what my grades were, there was a lot of discussion about, should I just drop out? Should I? So I stayed in college, a lot to stay with my friends, and a lot just to complete it. And so what ended up happening, like I said, is that I had more credits in history at that time. It was about 2007. And so they said, you can focus and go this way, and you can graduate by 2009. So that was the path I eventually took.
Any plans to teach like history in high school or?
Not
anything like that?
particularly. At the time, in 2008, I started driving school buses for Stillwater Public Schools. I learned very quickly that I do not want to teach children in any way, shape, or form. It was an experience. I have a lot of respect for the teachers and for school bus drivers, and it was a wonderful college job. As long as you could wake up early enough to work 3 hours, and you got off, you went to school with the kids. The kids went to their school, I went to college. And then I got out of class, my last class, 1:45, we'd go back to the bus barn about 2:30, get on a bus, drive it, and wait for the kids to get out at 3:30 and work for another 3 hours. And it was very good money. So it wasn't like your normal college job. It made quite a bit, and so I could afford to live on my own. I could live with a roommate, and we could live comfortably instead of eating ramen noodles every night.
Moved out of the dorm then, I take it?
Yeah, I moved out of the dorm, and I moved out of the dorm shortly after Dad passed away, so that would have been 2007. That would have been the beginning of 2006, the academic year in 2006, so that would have been fall 2006. I moved out of the dorm.
Well, when your dad was working at the drugstore, did you have a part-time job there with him?
No, I didn't ever work with him there. I worked everywhere. I worked at the Carmike Cinema for 4 years. I've worked at Lowe's across the street. I worked up and down. I've worked up and down Perkins Road. I worked at the GameStop that was over there on the corner.
Okay.
And then eventually over to the bus barn, which is also just right off that road. I've worked a number of jobs. I worked at the Philmont Scout Ranch in Cimarron, New Mexico, over the summers between 2007 and 2008. And then after graduating from college, the economy collapsed in 2008 and 2009. There was nothing for me. There was nothing for any of my friends. But on a whim, there was a Disney College Program seminar. I interviewed for the Disney College Program. I was going to drive the Kilimanjaro safari trucks because they're buses. I was driving buses. It was a pretty good fit. And then they said, hey, there's a audition for character performers in Oklahoma City. It's at Ballet OKC. You did plays back in high school. Would you want to do that? During my interview, I said, oh, it's just down the street. Why not? So I interviewed. They needed a tall, lanky guy, about 6'2". And so I went and worked for the entertainment department at Disney World for about a year, about 7 months. I was at Walt Disney World in Florida performing as animated characters.
Which one in particular?
I'm going to have to redact that one. To protect the magic, I will not say which characters. I was not any of them. I was friends with several of them, but I did not portray any of Disney's characters.
Okay.
But I worked for the entertainment department, and we had a lot of fun. I did a lot of wonderful events, met some really interesting people, and had a very surreal job. Getting to experience the parks in that way behind the scenes is amazing. And being able to get into the parks for free for 7 months, you actually get to enjoy them. Yes. And there were still things I didn't do. There were still things down there at the Disney parks I didn't do, simply because there was that much. I was there for 7 months. And I was also working. I worked at the Contemporary Resort. I worked in the restaurant Chef Mickey's. I worked in France Pavilion at Epcot. So trying to think where I did not work. I worked at a lot of Epcot. I worked at a lot of. I didn't work at Magic Kingdom all that often. There weren't many places for a 6'2" person. I worked at the animation. What is that called? Disney Hollywood Studios, which they're changing the name now. But I worked there a lot. They were since The Incredibles were in the animation building, so that was one of the places I worked, and I did a number of shifts there. Animal Kingdom, I had a couple of shifts at. I really didn't work there very often, but I earned my stripes there because at the time it was one of the outdoor locations, so it was very hot. And I was new, I was a CP, and I was scheduled there, so I had a lot to earn my stripes and costume out in the heat. And then I got cast in other locations, which eventually would have been Chef Mickey's. And then from there, at France, Epcot, with Belle and Beast were the ones over there. Mm-hmm.
Some fun mixed in with your work.
Yes, it was a really interesting time, and kept me away from worrying about other things.
Were you with other people from Oklahoma?
There were a few. In the entertainment department, there was another lady. She had graduated from OSU the year before. And then there was a lady I really like. Her name is Stephanie White. She had graduated with a hotel restaurant business administration degree in 2007, I want to say. And so she was actually the coordinator for that at that time. And so she was working at the Grand Floridian, and now is doing management somewhere. I don't really know where anymore. I should, but she is doing management at the resorts there, and that's her career. That's what she wanted to do. So that's how she got into that. I have friends that still work there in management. One's a management in Merchantainment and Frontierland, and the other one is a similar position at a resort. Mm-hmm.
Since we're talking about Disney, did you have a favorite ride?
A favorite ride? Depends on the time of year. In September, there's almost no one there. Basically, after Labor Day, everyone has to go to work. So the parks clear out almost entirely. One of my favorite things to do is actually the Hall of Presidents. I have a history degree.
With the history, yes.
So I knew some of them. I knew some of what they did. And at the time, it was very odd is that Barack Obama was president. So we had Robama. They put in Robama. He gave a speech. It was really cool to see the animatronic. But people would cheer for Bush, or they would cheer for their favorite president. So after a few times of doing this, I would cheer for ones I knew, like, hey, James K. Polk. All right. No one would know who I was talking about. So I would cheer for ones that were a little bit more historical. Tourists really had no clue until we got up to the current era. And I thought I got kind of kick out of doing that. Yeah, Californians would know Polk. In 1840, he was president during the Spanish-American War, 1846 to 1848, which gave us Arizona, Utah, Nevada, that side. And that's why we have 49ers in California instead of 48ers.
So it would help be a history major.
So that was one of the, and we all have weird quirks at the parks, and you're working with so many people so often. One of the things that I remember the most, my roommates, Corey and Michael Wenzel, we'd all graduated college. We all found ourselves in this apartment because we all shared it, and we'd all already graduated college. We'd all gone for the same reason. We didn't know what to do with ourselves. The girls across the way, we had a group of them. They had all graduated college. Everyone in this area had done the same thing. So we all became friends. Corey and Emily eventually got married. And one of my favorite memories is that Corey and Wenzel and I were at Epcot having a good time. We were going to ride a ride. It's called Mission Space. It's a very space-themed one, and it's a centrifuge. Well, this one lady, her granddaughter wanted to ride, but she really couldn't. And so they paired this little tiny girl with us. So we decided, we're college-age guys. We're cast members. She doesn't know it. We're going to make this as real as possible. And so we went to the whole gamut, and we had a little screen. We'd salute to Gary Sinise, who was the guy that gave us the pre-show intro. We got into our little cockpit and had all these buttons that don't do anything, and we click them like we knew exactly what they were doing. So this girl would have a good time. And then the ride starts up, and it's a centrifuge, so it holds you against the seat. She wanted to hold my hand, so I let her hold my hand. I don't know her name. I never did learn it. And so she had a great time, and we helped her push the buttons, which is really hard to do in a centrifuge because it's spinning. And so we're going to reach over and hit her buttons so that she can have a good time with it too. And then she went off and ran and had told her grandma how much fun she had, and we just disappeared. never be seen again. I really liked that because she had such a wonderful experience with complete strangers because she could. And that was really neat. And we're just three college, just out of college guys who would trust us to do anything. And we all decided to do the same thing at the same time without saying anything. We just knew we're going to make sure this girl had a fun time.
It's pretty nice. She won't get the same experience when she goes back for the second time.
Maybe not. Maybe she will. Maybe she'll remember it. Who knows? So it was an interesting time.
Back to your time on campus when you were struggling with what to do. Did you have anything that you would do for fun while you were on campus?
Oh,
besides working and studying, what did you do for fun?
I was a member of the sailing club. I was Jim Brewer was the Commodore at the time. That would have been 2000. That was 2006, 2007, 2008. A wonderful idea that a whole bunch of Oklahomans, landlocked state, were going to be in a sailing club.
I didn't know we had one.
Yep, and a number of them did regattas. They would race. They would race in regattas in these little boats called FJs. And I was never a good regatta racer, but we would compete against KU, OU. We would compete, and it was a really good time. We ended up having a spring break trip to sail to the Bahamas. So we rented a number of boats, 2 catamarans and a monohull, and a whole bunch of Okies decided that we were going to go sail on the ocean after sailing on lakes for all of our entire life. Jim Brewer, so he grew up in the New England area. Big waves, ocean didn't surprise him, and there's a number of our more talented sailors were. But on my boat, it was a catamaran. I'm trying to think of the name of it. I want to say it was the Catalina. It was a 42-foot catamaran. There was Skipper Bill, myself, Matt Ketchy, Nicole Kelbert at the time. I think she's married now. 2 other girls and 2 other guys. So there were about, I guess, 8 of us on that boat. And we were going to sail to the Bahamas. And that trip, it was a fun trip. Everything that would have been difficult happened. We got in a boat, and we got sailing. Our boat was at Fort Lauderdale. Now the other boats were in Miami, so we had to sail down to Miami to meet them. And it was an uneventful. When we woke up in the morning, it was beautiful in the ocean, actually in the bay, and we got ready to sail. We started out towards the Bahamas. The wind was in a strange direction. It was actually from the northwest, northwest. So it was pushing us away from the Bahamas. It was actually pushing us more down toward the Keys. Well, our boat was a whole bunch of sailors. We had Skipper Bill. He used to be a pilot. He would a boat pilot helps to navigate boats and jetties. So he did that. He was a very skilled sailor. And Matt Ketchy and I, we just needed something to do, so we worked on the winches, and we were going to make it. We made it out into open water, and we got into we were making about 14 knots, which is not a bad time, but we were having to tack against the wind a lot to make our way up. Some of the others were doing calculations saying that we would probably make it constantly tacking about 2 in the morning. That's not what anyone else in the trip wanted to do. Now, our boat we were going for it. We were going to do it no matter what. We had, they ended up having to call us back by signaling radio because the person that made the decision, their boat was several miles south of us. We had to more or less leapfrog the signal to us because we were going to go. We were the only ones making good time. And that was a little disappointing. We turned around and we decided instead of going to the Bahamas, we're going to go to the Keys. We're going to follow the wind. We're going to have a good spring break in the Keys. That was a good decision because, the open ocean. I remember seeing oil tankers because we were going up and down these waves. They were not big. They were 8-foot waves, which sounds big, but for ocean people, they're not. And we saw this oil tanker that just was massive, hitting the waves as if it was nothing. And we had people getting seasick from just going up and down. And we turned the boat around and started heading south toward Key Largo into the Florida Keys. And Skipper Bill gave me the helm. I've never sailed a boat in my life. I've sailed a boat on the lake. I've never sailed out in the ocean. I'm sitting here just holding the heading. It's not a big hard. And I Eventually, I saw a lake buoy ahead of me, and I'm thinking, well, we're in the ocean. That's a lake buoy. Should avoid that. What I did not know is that I had missed a number of buoys to the side that were big orange and red, which signify there's a reef. The lake buoy's on the top of it, the highest point. So we unfortunately skimmed the top of that reef. Skipper Bill very quickly told me that I was not going to be on the helm anymore. A little frustrated at my not noticing that we had passed these bigger orange and red. Fortunately, though, instead of being really punishing me, I was a little embarrassed that I had hit the coral reef. He taught me how to pilot the boat. So, no, I was never going to touch the helm again. However, once we got in open water again, he taught me to read the chart and know our heading. And I told him I earned my Eagle Scout, so I knew how to use a compass. So he handed me a specific nautical compass that's got a dome, and it's got the compass in there. It's got some poles to look at landmarks. So for the rest of the trip, I got to help him pilot the boat and choose the course. Then he would have someone else or him. Mostly at that point it was him or Matt Ketchy, or actually change the heading of the boat, which was really interesting. So I was happy he took that kind of embarrassing, well, you ran into a coral reef in the middle of the ocean, experience into something constructive. From that point, we anchored at I think it was Key Largo that night, and our anchor held for a while. We cooked up some food, and we were going to take some of the food over to the boat, and our dinghy died, and so we went off adrift. I was with Skipper Bill on the dinghy, and took them a while to realize that we were drifting away. We had no way of telling anyone. No one noticed that we were starting to drift away, and then finally we had a flashlight. I don't know whose boat it was, and they were finally figured out that we were adrift. They got their dinghy out, and I remember Jim being a little upset because one boat was worried about their steak, while here is two of the other people are just floating out in the dinghy. So they retrieved us and brought us back to the boat, and in the middle of the night our anchor broke. Now when it breaks, it doesn't break the chain, it breaks the dirt. So the anchor just started to slip. So in the middle of the night, the anchor broke its mooring. We got up and we pulled the anchor up and we started to circle. And that was a very surreal moment for me because it was an overcast night. There was no scar, there was no light. You know, we were out pretty much in the middle of the bay. Can't see anything. Can't see anything. There's no light at all. So my job was to take this flashlight and to shine out to make sure we don't hit anything. I've never experienced it being so dark. The flashlight just goes away. You just shine in the light, and there's nothing to reflect it off of it. It's a very scary, and it makes you feel really small to know that, you know, there's just nothing out there. And we are a little island, a little boat, with the light coming down, and that is it, and everything else is black. Mm. When we finally got a place for the anchor to hold, and we went to bed. Woke up the next day, decided to go again. The next day we were going to a nearby reef, the Molasses Reef. So we took these boats and we went to the Molasses Reef, and I had gotten a pair of snorkel fins and goggles and such for my birthday that year to go take on this trip. And we went out and we were looking at fish, and I learned very quickly that there wasn't a lot to see. We weren't far enough into the reef yet, but I was also learning very quickly that I'm not a good swimmer. At least I was not as good a swimmer as I thought I was. I'm used to swimming in pools, and there are waves. I started getting tired. Fortunately, my buddy who was swimming with me, like, look, I don't know. I think we should head back because I'm getting real tired. We're a long ways from the boat. And he kind of looked at me funny, but I said, no, I just don't feel comfortable out here. On the trip back to the boat, I was just getting more and more tired. It was getting harder and harder for me to swim, harder and harder for me to keep my head above water. Fortunately, I mean, at that point, I was just more or less doing kind of the dead man's float to conserve energy and coming up and swimming some against, doing whatever I could. I was very, very scared. This trip doesn't sound all that fun, but I was scared. I mean, here in the middle of a reef, Molasses Reef, I don't know if I'm going to drown. I'm getting really tired. we make it close enough to where someone threw a life jacket I could put underneath me. And then I got on the boat, and people were very concerned, like, "Are you okay?" You know, it didn't look like someone that would have gotten that tired. And I got some water, and we noticed that Orville's boat, that the monohull, was getting smaller. And that it had a big yellow frayed thing at the end of it, which used to be his anchor. So his boat had broke its anchor rope and was adrift. So fortunately, everyone was so scared about me being almost drowning, we were on a boat. So we got everyone on the boat. We went and chased down this other boat, and Jim, he was the Commodore, his friend Nate, they finally got a dinghy close enough to it. He jumped onto the dinghy of the other boat, got it under control, and then we decided that we had enough fun for that day, and we should go down to the next key, which would be Marathon. Marathon Key was wonderful. And then it's a very beautiful key. It's about 8 miles long, but it's only about 2 football fields wide. We actually docked at a marina. Decided that we weren't going to dock out in the shallow bay, and had a wonderful time there. There's a number of local places to eat. We were on dry land. We went to We went to a Publix, which is it's a nice grocery store down in Florida, and got some nice cheese. And for once, nothing wrong happened. We went and swam at the beach nearby. There was this wonderful gentleman that him and his son made their livelihood fishing. So they would fish for tuna, mahi-mahi, that sort of, I don't know more exotic fish, and that's how they would pay their marina fees. And they had befriended a manatee near their boat, and I guess manatees, you're not supposed to, but they enjoy you with fresh water being sprayed on them. And their signs saying not to, but I guess they were ignoring, or this one they'd done to the point where it was accustomed to it. And so it was neat to see a wild manatee up close. There were porpoises that had swam through the marina at one point as well. I was kind of sad when we left Marathon Key. It was wonderful. I had just turned 21 a couple weeks beforehand, so I had my first mojito with key limes, and it was wonderful. And so a lot of really good memories there. When we decided to start heading back, we had to sail back from Marathon Key back up to Miami. In the process of doing that, we ended up getting a lobster pot caught in our prop. It was a line that wasn't buoyed. It would have happened to anyone. But it ended up burning out one of the engines. So we had wonderful lobster to eat. I mean, at this point, the engine's broken. We finally get under the boat and realize what the problem was, clear out the rope, and we had this pot that had 9 Florida lobsters, and we decided that we would be poachers. We took 3 and we put the other 6 back in the pot, and they were amazing, and they tasted wonderful. I mean, absolutely the freshest you could possibly get, and we figured that pot had torn up our engine. We could at least take a couple lobsters out and cook them. But now we were sailing most of the time, but we had one engine to work with. Well, throughout the way back, we realized on the next day that there was a squall building, and we were at Key Largo again. We were going to sail up to Miami, and then hopefully drop the boats off there. And the storm was building the entire time we got to Miami. We got to Miami, and we found out that, of course, of all people, our particular charter boat wanted us to sail the boat back to Fort Lauderdale, because they had another group that would be waiting pretty much as soon as we docked it to get on it and go on another trip. And we told them, the engine's broken, right? And they said that's not a problem. They'd fix that. So we got to Miami, and they wouldn't. There was a storm growing, and there was a storm at that point, and they said, no, you need to sail the boat back. So we got on the boat, and the people that on the trip that had actually got on their boat at Miami, they were going home. So it was just our boat at this point, just about 8 of us. And we got in the boat, and we started sailing through that storm. We went through a jetty, and I found out that cruise boats are immense next to a 42-foot catamaran, and the cruise boat is giant. And we got sailing in that storm, and we had one engine, so we had to sail it. we couldn't just drop the sail. We had to be careful with how we did it. Unfortunately, Skipper Bill knew everything there was to know about sailing a boat in a storm. But for the most people, they were terrified. It basically boiled down to Matt Ketchy and I just wanting something to do. We couldn't just sit there. If we just sat there, we would be worried, scared, and like all the other girls and a couple of guys who were below deck. So I would go down to the chart, make sure we weren't going to hit anything, because there were some shipwrecks and there were some things that we could hit. And made sure that we weren't going to hit those on our tacks against the wind into the storm, and then we would just sit next to the winch, and we were sailing, and the wind would be blowing the water in our eyes, and it was sharp. And we finally worked our way for a couple of hours through the storm up to Fort Lauderdale, where we could get into the jetty and we could drop the mainsail and then use our one engine to get into the marina. And it was a wonderful feeling. In hindsight, I wish we had worn life jackets, but we jumped up on that mainsail and we just pulled it down. We pulled it down, and we were high. We just sailed through a storm. I'm sure our mothers would be proud of us sitting up there on the edge of this boat and just going back and forth. And if we'd fallen off, who knows what would happen. But it was a good time, and so we got that boat back to the marina, and sure enough, they got that thing ready for someone else to go on it, which was fortunate because there was some damage that we did to it, and because they wanted to flip it so quickly, they couldn't prove who did it, or that there's not really any proof that I hit a reef that may or may not have offset the engine that then got pulled off by a prop later. But that was an adventure with the Oklahoma State Sailing Club. There were several. We had a gentleman named Orville who was our community member. He had a nice 30-foot ketch. It had a concrete bottom, and so we all learned how to sail a larger boat on Lake Carl Blackwell. Lake Carl Blackwell, which was interesting. That boat was called the Swan Maiden. It has a concrete keel. It was built in the Bering Sea. It's designed for really heavy weather. It seems a little overkill for Lake Carl Blackwell, but it was a fishing lake. They had just filled it up. They hadn't knocked over any trees. So one of the exciting things when you're sailing Lake Carl Blackwell is when the boat starts to rise up, and you hear a crack, and it starts to fall back down because you've hit a tree with a concrete keel that has now cracked that rotting tree, which is where there are fish and all kinds of things, and just knock it over. So there were a lot of really interesting people to meet in the Oklahoma Sailing Club. I believe Jack Hodson, at one time he was like the OSU liaison with the faculty. I don't know if he still is or not.
I don't even know. Didn't know we had one, so I don't know. So that was your fun.
that was an adventure, to say the least.
Were you a member of any other organization, activity type clubs?
Activity type clubs?
Besides that one?
Not particularly. I didn't do any of the fraternities. I didn't do any of the service organizations. For the most part, it was just the sailing club.
Attend football games or basketball games?
Oh yeah. We always went to the football games, and if we could, we used to camp out for tickets for the basketball games. Trying to remember, I believe I was still in college. Yes, Eddie Sutton was still coach for a year or two while I was in college, and then it was his son. We always enjoyed the basketball. It was always hard to get the basketball tickets when Eddie Sutton was coach. You almost couldn't get them.
Yeah. That's about the time they were raising the roof. No, that was before.
Yeah, that was
when
before.
they raised the roof.
When they raised the roof. Yeah, that was. They were building Boone Pickens Stadium. I remember the year before it was still Lewis Field, and then my senior year they started building it, and then it was just enough open for people to watch games. It was still very much under construction when I was in college, and they finally finished it my senior year, or my first senior year, I guess, 2004 or 2008.
You were in the band in high school, but you weren't in the band at OSU.
No, I did not do band in OSU. I didn't think I would have time, and it was just sort of a high school thing. I didn't want to pursue it in college, so.
Well, if you were in plays and such in high school, did you carry that over?
Mm-hmm. I did a Little Shop of Horrors. I was the voice of the plant in 2004 in high school. I didn't do anything with theater for a long time, and then when I came back from Disney World, which would have been January 2010, I sat around home, drove school buses, and then there was an ad in the paper for Town and Gown saying they were doing Little Shop of Horrors. And, well, I'd been to the plant. I didn't have anything to lose. I figured if anyone knows that part as good as me, I'd go and audition to it again. It's no big deal. I went to auditions, and I remember, my wife would say it differently. I remember during my audition, I felt like everyone clapped for everybody when they said their part, because we were waiting on the pianist to come play. And when I said my part, I don't remember hearing any clapping. I was a little upset about that. And I was like, well, this is a kind of cliquish place. And they really weren't. Ashley says that they clapped for everybody because she would have been the outside observer. So when it came time to sing my song, I was singing a song of a villain from Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog that was written by Josh Whedon. So I decided I would just do that in character and be a jerk because they'd been a jerk to me, and then I was just gonna blow this whole thing off because I didn't know any better. I was just kind of maybe a little upset and probably a little hungry. So I sang my part. I sang it well. I kind of acted more of the part of the villain, and then the movie more or less left. And I got a call from Kevin Worley, the director, about a couple days later. He said, you know what, you can have the part of the plant, but I liked your audition. Would you want to be the dentist? He wanted a jerk. I just happened to have acted like a jerk. So I said, sure, I could do the dentist. That's a part I hadn't played before. And so then I went in and into rehearsals with Town and Gown Theater to do Little Shop of Horrors. And I met a lady named Ashley Hodges. And she and I hit it off. We eventually got married. But it was a very fun show. There were a lot of good times. I met a lot of really interesting people and then got involved with Town and Gown. And Ashley was big into some of the theater. She was much more into the theater. She had actually graduated from Oklahoma State in 2007. She might get on me for that. 2007 with a degree in theater. And so then she was auditioning, and she was working for a home health agency at the time, and we got along pretty well. But yeah, we did a number of shows there. Did Little Shop of Horrors, followed by, I think, Rumors, which is a Neil Simon show, which she played. Yeah, she played my wife, and that was all kinds of fun. I think that was when I met Bonnie. I think it was Rumors when I met Bonnie. And then we did Clue. And my wife directed Clue. And I worked backstage in a number of shows. She did All My Sons. I think I built half the sets that year. We were really involved for a while. Mm-hmm.
So you can sing.
Yes, I can sing. I can sing.
We would ask you to give us a sample, but I don't know what you would choose.
Something with the bass or baritone part.
Do you know the alma mater?
I do know the alma mater. Do you want you?
Sure, if you're willing. We'd love it.
Maybe I don't know the alma mater. I know how it goes.
Loyal and true.
I remember Loyal and True. That's the end of it, though.
Yeah. Do you know it?
Uh-oh. Madness Madison? No?
I watch the words and
see them on the Jumbotron, and I know all the words when I'm watching it on the Jumbotron. I don't know how it begins. I know the middle of it.
About Harold the Halls or something like that, too, isn't it?
That's the second line. That's the second. Oh, wow. None of us can remember. We should be better Cowboys fans than that.
It will come to you before we finish up.
Mm-hmm.
So what year did you and Ashley get married?
We got married this year in July. We got married July 3rd, 2015. So about 2 months ago. Mm-hmm.
Well, how did you end up in Dewey?
How did we end up in Dewey? That's a long story. Well, first we were in Stillwater. We met. Ashley, I got a position with the Boy Scouts and Last Frontier Council as a district executive in Oklahoma City. So we moved to Edmond to work for the Boy Scouts. In that time, Ashley had decided that she enjoyed her job as a dental assistant at Dr. Kendrick's. She learned a lot from Dr. Kendrick, and she decided that she wanted to take that next step to go from assistant to dental hygienist. She applied to the, I don't know if we can say it here, the OU dental hygiene program, and got accepted, but accepted to a distant site in Bartlesville. So we packed up and we moved to Bartlesville. That's how we ended up here. We stayed here for the past 2 years or so.
Okay. And I think Bonnie or someone had said you worked at Pawnee Bill's
Yep.
for a while.
Yep, I worked at Pawneeville Ranch. I was a blacksmith. At Philmont Scout Ranch, I had learned how to blacksmith. Philmont is the world's largest youth camp. It is owned by the Boy Scouts. It's in Cimarron, New Mexico. It is 256,000 square acres of land, and it's a wonderful place. I worked at the Kit Carson Museum, which is the farthest south camp. It is the Riado is the name of it, and we did historical interpretation. I had met with a gentleman named Doug Palmer in Stillwater who did blacksmithing, so I would know something ahead of time, and I went down there and I had 3 months to put coal in a fire, stick metal in it, and start hitting it until it made a shape. After a couple of days or months of doing that, you can make some really nice things. I wouldn't say I was ever very skilled at it. I could make knick-knacky items. I can make a rose out of steel. I can make some door handle pulls. I can make some wire sharkers, but I could not make anything really useful. I couldn't make a tool to save my life. I could make all these other pretty things. However, in a historical education setting, you don't have to make interesting things. You have to teach somebody what blacksmithing was like. So I learned how to teach kids how to make S-hooks, or at least hammer the metal safely around it so they can get a feel for what blacksmithing is. So I did that for 2 years in New Mexico, and then in 2011, there was a position at Pawneeville Ranch, and they wanted some of the lead tours, but they also did these other things, and I just kind of said, nonchalantly said, well, I can blacksmith and you have a forge, you have a farrier forge over here to the side. I'd be more than happy to teach classes or to teach school groups is mostly what goes through Pawneeville Ranch. I'd be more than happy to demonstrate blacksmithing to some of these school groups. And so I did that for about a year. I would give tours of the mansion, and then on Saturdays I would work in the forge, and if anyone that came by, I would teach them a little bit about, mostly at that time period, that's 1900, it's wagon making and horseshoeing. Not a lot of blacksmithing at that point. That's much farther, the Pawneeville Ranch time. So I would talk more about farriering, whereas at Philmont, we were working at 1851, so we were going to make everything. So I would teach kids how to make nails, because nails are incredibly important and easy to make and easy to show kids how to make. So I did that for about a year, worked for their Wild West show, and it was an interesting time. They have some very, very dedicated people that work at the Pawneeville Ranch, and they love what they do, and can't imagine them anywhere else. A gentleman named Kevin Webb who portrays Pawneeville, and he's very skilled at whip tricks, and there's a lady named Anna Davis there that works at the Pawneeville Ranch as one of the historical advisors. I'm not sure what her actual title is. She's not a docent. She's more in charge of the collection and more in charge of the operation. But she's not a curator either. She's sort of in between. And she's incredibly knowledgeable about preserving artifacts. Right now they're incredibly worried about the number of earthquakes that are shaking the house. So they're wondering what they can do about it, since the house is an antique, and it's a national. It was built in 1908, so it's shaking.
Was a good fit for a history major?
It was a good fit for a history major that didn't want to teach. Honestly, I like to joke that my history degree is useful, but my blacksmithing got me in the door than to use my history degree. It had to be interesting. You couldn't just have the degree. You had to be a little bit more interesting than everyone else that had the degree too.
Well, after there, what did you do?
After that, that's when I went to work for the Boy Scouts. While we were there, I see you have a note. There's a gentleman in Stillwater named Eldon Wall. We had met him at a Payne County fair. And he is a wonderful man. I'm not sure. You should actually interview him too. Now that I think about it, he would be a wonderful.
His last name was
Walt. I can give you his contact information.
okay.
He's been a beekeeper, and he sells honey at the Payne County Fair. He's been doing it now for 47 years. At the time, he'd only been doing it for 45, or 40, 42. And he was, for whatever reason, he was just really nice and talkative to us. He didn't see, I'd never really talked to him in person before that point. And he told me that when there's a swarm of bees, and he had some pictures, you cut off the branch, you put a towel in front of a beehive, and you shake the bees off that branch, and they all march into the hive. Sounds ludicrous. Doesn't make any sense at all that bees would do that. So that stuck with me. I really couldn't answer why, so I started looking at books. Like, somewhere in here's got to be, this is true or not. I went looking online. I couldn't find anything that specifically stated that. I went and read books and learned more about bees, and I found them to be very funny and very interesting. So I knew at that time that there was a gentleman that lived next to our house and near Skyline that had all these bee boxes in his backyard, and I figured, well, I'll just go and knock on his door. I didn't know if he'd be home, and I knocked on his door. It happened to be Eldon. I did not know at that time. He lived a block from me. So we talked to Eldon for a while, and he told us his eyes, he's macular degeneration. He really can't see as well. And he could use some help with the bees. I said, well, you know what, it's November. If you still need help in March, I drive school buses, so I'm free during the day. Just give me a call. Well, sure enough, in about February, right before March, he called me and asked if I wanted to go help him with his bees. And I said, well, sure, it's no problem. So he let me borrow a mask, and we drove to Coyle and saw some of his bees there. We drove to Stillwater, saw some of his bees. We drove to Jim Mote's farm, which is just north of the junior high. It's on Jardo. We went and checked his bees there, and it was interesting. It was kind of a weird feeling. You get in front of a box of bees, and you open it up, and there's hundreds of bees around you, and you're just thinking, what the heck am I doing? This is not natural. But I didn't get stung. We weren't wearing gloves. We just stick our hands in there. I would learn later why. And so I thought that was interesting. I wasn't scared. So I got a call about 2 weeks later, and I said, well, we've had a swarm. Would you mind helping me with that? And I said, okay. So we drove back to Jim Mote's farm, and sure enough, here was a swarm no taller than this table is. And he told me that in the cool months of spring, the swarms will be lowered to the ground, and as it gets hotter, they'll move higher up in trees. Once again, it's more anecdotal knowledge. I never found it written in a book, but I have seen it with Eldon. So sure enough, we got a box. He put some frames of comb in there. He put a bed sheet and stapled to the front, pulled out the sheet, cut the branch, shook it real hard, and I'll be damned, every one of those bees walked in that box. I watched it. I could not prove him wrong, and it's funny when you try to prove someone that's doing this for 42 years wrong, it doesn't really work. So I just helped him for the next few months, and I ordered a box online. It came to my house, and the day it came to my house, I had checked to make sure all of my stuff was there. Elton called and said, I have a swarm. Do you want it? I said, well, I just got my box in the mail. Yes, I do. That swarm had been caught near Couch Park. In fact, there's a tree that kind of dips down over the road. It was right there. So Eldon had brought this box of bees that he had captured the swarm, and proceeded to take each frame and just shake it and knock every bee off just really hard. And they fell in the box, and they flew in the air, and we put them in one box to another box, and then I had bees in my backyard. And so from that point on, we had bees in our backyard for about a year. So I started with a hive and let it build, and then in the next spring, the reason they didn't sting me from earlier is they didn't have any honey to defend. There was nothing in the box. They were out, most of the bees were out trying to find anything. It was still too early to find anything. So there was just nothing for them to really defend. They're awfully nice. They're awfully quiet in the spring because they're busy doing other things. So we went from 2 hives, and then one of my days I had taken a couple of kids from another school because the bus broke down, and I'd driven out to take them home near the Harley-Davidson dealership on 32nd Street. And I saw some people out there. There's actually a florist out there. I saw them working, and I had gotten rid of all my kids. So I stopped the bus in the middle of a dirt road, walked out of it, and met up with Vicky and Terry Stanback. Said, "Hey, I'm a beekeeper. Would you mind if I brought my bees here?" Didn't know them, had them. And they said, "Sure, we're more than happy to." So we waited until a good day. I'd confined the bees, and we moved them out to Bear Creek's florist, and they've been there for the past 3 years. It's a wonderful location to have bees. It's a commercial florist. That's their livelihood. So the bees, if it's 100,000 degrees outside and there's not been rain for the past 3 months, well, there's still flowers because that's their livelihood. They're very, very spoiled bees. Just to put it in the easiest terms, they have no need to worry about flowers, no need to worry about water, and they're in a nice shaded tree line, so the trees block the wind from our storms, from either direction, from north or south, and they're in the shade half the day. So they're incredibly spoiled bees. That same year, that was 2013. No, that was 2012 when we finally got them out there. We got our first honey harvest. It was a very water white would be the correct term. Water white thin honey. It was made from, the vast majority of it was the purple hairy beck that grows on the side of the road, because there's about a mile or so of road between 32nd Street and 14th Street. Bees will fly in 1.5 miles in any direction to make honey. They'll fly 3 miles to find food. So they cut that in half. That's where they'll actually make enough food to also produce honey with. So you draw a circle from 32nd Street to 14th Street and then just go around. That's their entire range. It's very large. That year there was just a lot of hairy beck, and we had already missed one of the blooms of crimson clover that the florist grows as a filler. It's actually a weed, but they grow it as a filler. We had missed that bloom. So it was all very, very, very thin, almost white color, thin, and it had a cinnamon taste to it. It was our first year of honey. We sold it in little pint jars and half-pint jars. The next year we would get a little bit more serious about it. I bought a little ledger book, and we went and ordered, there's a place called Beekeeping Etc. in Oklahoma City. They sell plastic jars. So we went from glass to plastic, and which was a much better option. It was lighter, and they didn't break as often if you drop them. And so that year, that was 2013, we actually had a large honey harvest. Large for us. We'd never had that much. We had about 2.5 gallons, somewhere around 30 pounds, which we then bottled up most of it, and then we sold some to a lady that makes jams and jellies at the Stillwater farmer's market. Her name is Susan Weber. She does sand plum jelly, and she also does a lemon honey jelly, which is honey from our bees. So that year I also entered the Payne County Fair. Our honey went in first place in the Payne County Fair. It was very, very fun. I had that blue ribbon somewhere. Then the next year we actually hit that crimson clover harvest, and our honey was very dark. Same location, nothing changed. It was just very dark from the crimson clover and any other flowers they could get. That year, which would have been 2014, we entered Oklahoma City Fair, and we won first place in the Oklahoma City Fair. Now that sounds impressive, but there was only one other entrant. So I was going to win first or second either way. This year we are entering the Tulsa Fair. We are entering all three. So we got second place in the Payne County Fair, which is my fault. I could have checked the mason jar lid a little better to make sure it wasn't dented. It's all based on appearance, so it has nothing to do with how the honey tastes. It has to do with how it looks like. And if your rim is not perfect, well, then someone else's is. Well, then there's a point. And so that's probably why I got second. That's what I can think, because there were several pretty noticeable dents in my ring. I should have been a little bit more choosy. But we also are entering 3 different fairs this year. For Tulsa actually has a more sophisticated, a little bit more professional honey competition. We had to buy queen line jars, and there's a completely different jar that's specifically for honey. And they have what I really want is a rosette. And the ribbon is nice, and blue ribbon, but a rosette has a button and ruffles, and it's purple and white, or sometimes blue. And no fair I've entered had rosettes for honey, except so Tulsa does, so that's why I'm entering Tulsa. I want the rosette.
Do you harvest the cone too, or just
We
the
did
honey?
once. We did the comb once. We generally leave the comb on for the bees. It takes a large investment in the bees to produce wax from honey is a carbohydrate, it's a sugar, and then pollen is a protein. So when they eat these, they excrete wax, and it takes a lot of that honey to make. So you basically have a choice. You either spend your season making wax with your bees, or you spend your season making bees or honey. You really can't have all three. So instead of cutting the comb to make comb honey, I like to keep that investment in wax so that the next season they have it to build brood on, fill with honey, and then when we spin it out, we can put it right back on the hive. Whereas if I cut it out to make comb honey, they would have to start from scratch. Granted, that location is good enough; they could probably be fine. But I've just we haven't done cut comb honey again. It's fun. It's really interesting. I might again. I just haven't done it in a while.
Do you wear the full get-up?
I don't wear the full get-up all the time. Most of the time I just wear a jacket that has gloves and a veil. I have the full get-up for when I do removals from houses. Back in 2012, we got a call from a News Channel 4 anchor named Jelly Mills, and she had bees in her wall, on the dividing wall outside of her house. And I think it was Catherine Wineland. Somebody knew her personally and said, "Oh, I know a beekeeper." And so we went out there and we chiseled open that wall and removed the bees. And I have a full get-up for doing bee removals, which are always really entertaining, just to see the natural comb and how bees have found a gap that's no bigger than a couple, like saying 6 inches, and they made a hive in there. It's always really neat to see how they did it. But of course, we got to go tear them out, and we use a vacuum that has a special hole in it, more or less, that controls the suction, so we can suck up the bees without killing them. And that's how we remove the bees from walls and from combs. We just suck them all up and put them in a vacuum. And the way the vacuum works is we suck them up, and then when we're ready, just shake them down, and it pushes all the bees down. We take the lid off and put another lid on and take them home. Put them in the back of my car, and we drove back to Stillwater from Midwest City.
Well, I mean, in the news lately, they've been saying the bee population is going way down.
A lot of the bees are owned by commercial beekeepers, so when they say the bee population is down, about 98% of all colonies of bees are owned by commercial beekeepers. They did see a large number of drops, but a large number of drops were also based on mostly a number of, like they like to say, colony collapse disorder. Well, what is colony collapse disorder? It really is a number of some interesting things that happen when you keep bees by the thousands. I mean, if you're talking 10,000 colonies, it's several million bees. If there's a parasite, you treat the entire lot. You don't really treat the one. And quite honestly, statistically, you probably would have it in a large diffusion of all the hives. So it makes sense to treat that way, but that's not necessarily the best option. Also, just the act of migratory beekeeping, which you're limiting what the bees can eat based on what crop is available. So if you think of almonds in California, there are miles of almonds. In fact, there's enough miles of almonds that you can put a hive, and that only thing in that 3-mile circle is almonds. So if all you ate was broccoli, it's not going to do you any good either. So then from there, they get all put on a truck after about 3 weeks, and then they get shipped to the next one, which I think is blueberries, and then they get shipped down to Florida for oranges. And it's not actually the act of beekeeping is not natural at all. So if you find someone saying they have all natural organic beekeeping, the straight up act of manipulating frames of honey is not natural or organic.
Well, that makes sense too. Yeah.
A natural organic honey would mean they found a tree and cut it out of there, and you might get that from. There are some places where I know Kenya has a number of that. They have honey hunters there.
Well, you said your first batch tasted a little bit like cinnamon.
It did have a cinnamon aftertaste. The second batch had a wintergreen aftertaste. It was much darker. and it's just from the available nectar sources. This year's is a lot lighter. We found out from Susan Weber that where our bees are, there's the commercial florist, but I guess about a quarter-mile southwest, there's a farmer with a large clover field. We didn't know this, but he talked to them and said, well, there's thousands of bees in my field, and I've never seen so many, and it's because of the rain. There was more rain. The nectar content of the clover is higher, and so the bees have been over there, and so our honey actually went from being very dark back to a kind of an amber color. It has a different taste. It's had a different taste every year. Slight changes. Now there's still the straight normal honey taste, but just slight variations based on what's available.
It sounds like you're a perpetual learner, even though it's not college, not in college.
Master of many trades, or what is it? Jack of all trades, master of none. I couldn't call myself a master of anything.
You're just curious, and you go out and figure it out and learn.
There's a quote from Albert Einstein. To paraphrase it, it says, "I'm not particularly special. I'm just eternally curious." Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting. I think. Well, how often do you get back to Stillwater?
Well, currently I am. I've been in Stillwater quite often. Ashley got season tickets to football games, so we're there pretty much every weekend now. We get back to Stillwater pretty often. My mother still lives there. Okay. So I've got a number of friends there because we grew up there. So we get back to Stillwater at least once a month, I would say.
Do you attend homecoming and walk around and all those festivities?
We go to those when we can. I don't think we went last year, but I know we go as many times as we can.
And do you recall your graduation day?
I do. It was in May of 2009, and it was overcast and kind of rainy. I do remember that, though. I remember that there was a big hubbub because 2 years prior, the president came. I think that was, 2007? 2007. I think Bush came in 2007. Then they decided they weren't going to have a speaker in 2008. And then that didn't go over very well. So 2009 they had someone speak, and I don't remember who it was, but they weren't very interesting. And we were all still upset that they had the president 2 years before, and we got whoever this guy was.
Was it in the stadium or was it in the arena?
It was in Gallagher.
Yeah.
It was in Gallagher, but I think most of the graduations are in Gallagher anymore.
Yeah, that's tough.
It was in arts and science, so I think I was in the morning. I was the morning graduation of Art and Science College. There was one in the afternoon as well. That's when they started splitting them up.
Well, do you have any advice for current students?
Advice for current students? I know. I have to think about that for a little bit. The advice I give most people is that, everyone wonders, well, how did you wind up in New Mexico? How did you wind up in Florida? Of all of the most interesting things, and how I ended up here at the funeral home, I worked there. I didn't go on a trip. I worked for these places. So if I wanted to know what it was like to be a funeral director, I'm currently, I worked here for 2 years. I worked as an apprentice. I'm taking classes at UCO now to get my license. But the most important thing is that everything looks good on paper. No one's ever going to tell you the bad side of things, even if they're very closely trusted. The only way you're going to learn whether you like something or not is to go do it. I read books on beekeeping. I spent more money on books on beekeeping than I want to admit. I didn't really learn anything useful until I was doing it. Now, I had all that knowledge from the books, so I knew enough about what was going on. But I did not learn that bees are very much like people, and if it's hot and humid, they're going to be just as upset as you are. And if it's nice and cool, then they'll be a little more quiet. Bees have different buzzes for things. It's not in any book. You can tell if they're upset, you can hear it. It goes, boo, real loud, and that bee's not too happy. or sometimes they don't make any noise at all. We had a hive that was almost entirely silent. They kind of made a little soft buzz, but you didn't hear much at all. But I learned a lot of things by doing it. So why would you go do sailing? Well, there's a sailing club. Let's go find out. Let's go do it. So I would never discount an opportunity if you have it. I'm kind of rambling now. I don't really. I should have thought of some better advice.
Well, that's okay, but we need to back up too, though, and,
Okay.
and have you tell us how you came to be.
Oh, here.
Yeah.
How did we get here to the funeral home?
Yes.
That is another long story. So my father passed away in 2006. It was February 15th, 2006. I was 19. He died of acute cardiac death syndrome. So in the middle of the night, his heart stopped. He was 51. It devastated our family. We went through the funeral process, and I remember a lot of it. And I don't remember a lot of it. There's a lot of things that I wish I had remembered better. I do remember needing a job to do. It's common. I remember being very upset at people. I remember being not exactly the nicest guy to be around. And what I've learned, and part of the reason what brought me here, is that a couple of my friends' fathers passed away within the next couple of years as well, and I wished I could have done something to help them. A lot of the time spent at OSU was handling my grief. I did that a number of different ways, and a lot of what I've just described could be considered avoidance. Doing anything possible to not think about this over here. So my dad died in 2006. I started the sailing club within about 4 months. Anything to avoid it. Push it over there and deal with it at another time. That only works for so long. And you're faced with the realization of that someone is gone. So I was interested in that. There was a number of times I kind of took different classes, and most of the time, like I said, I took these classes so I would have time to think. And when I got back from Disney World, I met Ashley. Ashley's grandparents had just passed away, and so we had something a little bit in common and a little bit different than just we both like theater. And we talked about things we missed and how you feel when you lose somebody. A lot of times, especially in this industry, people wonder, well, am I going crazy? I've heard a lot of people say that, and it's not really. When you're handling grief, nothing is crazy. Absolutely nothing. Being angry at people is not crazy. When they have no idea. Binge eating, that people do all sorts of things to handle grief. When we moved up to Bartlesville, I was actually driving school buses for a while, and I had gotten sick. I'd gotten a wire crossed, and I had started to have anxiety driving buses. I couldn't do it. I would get on a bus, and I would make it about half a mile when I'd start breaking out in sweat, and by the time we made it to a mile, I was almost passing out. That's not safe. Not a school bus. No. I ended up losing that job, and sitting around the house for a while, not doing anything, being pretty worthless. And then I have a CDL. I went to the funeral homes because I could drive any sort of passenger vehicle, which at the time I thought limousines. I can drive your limousine legally. Didn't realize their limousines are too small to matter. You don't need a CDL to drive them. But so I went to this one, I went to that one, and they all were varying levels of interested at all. Most of them weren't. And then I came to hear the Davis family funeral home, and I told them about my dad. I told them about some of the experiences I'd had, because they wondered why this young kid wants to work for a funeral home. I don't think Carter really knew what to think of me at the time, but he said, okay, you can work, and we worked a service. It was a really iconic first service to work. It was a lady, Katie Peterson, had passed away, and she was an influential person in Dewey. And they had a horse-drawn carriage for her casket. So we went to Memorial Park in Bartlesville, and sure enough, they had big black Percheron draft horses with all the tack with an 1800s horse-drawn hearse carriage. It was really interesting and really neat. In that time, I got my insurance producer license, and that's when Carter kind of, all right, this kid's not just not just looking for a handout. And so I started working here on a limited basis. I got my apprenticeship through the Oklahoma Funeral Board, and I started helping them with calls. I had wondered, since I'd dealt with my own father's passing away, could I help people? Could I even do this? And I found it very quickly that I fit in pretty well. Maybe I'm not the oldest person, but when you step through a serious amount of grief, having a father or a mother or brother, sister, immediate family passing away, it's easier to sympathize with other people and losing their own loved ones, even if they've known there's been an illness forever. Yeah, my father passed away suddenly, but and that does not really correlate with someone that has a degenerative disease, but grief as a whole is similar. Mm-hmm. You can't say that you're going to grieve the same way, but knowing that someone is grieving is a whole lot better place to start. And knowing that, yeah, they might be absolutely, they might be in shock that their loved one passed away, and now they feel like they're out of control, so they need to control whatever they can. Knowing that helps out a lot whenever you're in this sort of situation, knowing that that's what they need to feel that. You need to let them do some of that. Otherwise, it's not going to get along. Because it's amazing how powerless you can feel when someone passes away. I worked for Carter and did more calls, receiving people, and doing the embalmings, marking the funerals. We had a lady that passed away of a cancer, who she was 34, I believe. Her name was Hillary. And I remember her husband was not much older than I am. In fact, I think he was only a year older than I am. And I remember how rushed everyone was, his family was making him. And so I tried to make a point of it, saying, your wife just passed away. You've only been married a few years. Spend as much time as you need. You're going to have people saying you need to come do this, you need to come do that. And honestly, as a funeral home, we're here for you and for your family. You don't have to go do this right now. If you need to stay here and be with your wife, do that. Don't let all of the thousand of little mundane decisions that people come and ask take you away from what is the moment, which is to acknowledge the passing of your loved one and spend that time with them. Surprisingly, that was one of the few times I was able to have that direct sort of contact in a grieving situation. Most of the time, we don't. We're doing all the mundane decisions and all that, and trying to get things taken care of. I was surprised at there's a definite need for a lot more of the grief counseling, a lot more of the acceptance and working through these issues, but the reluctance for those people that need it to even come get it. Mm-hmm. A lot of people say, well, the funeral home, they do this, that, they don't have time. It's not that we don't have time. People don't take advantage of it. We would be more than happy to go through any of these issues with anybody. We'll sit out here and talk to you for as long as you need. We know the people that call if you need that. There's a lot of people that just kind of feel like, well, that's there, and we keep all of that at a distance. As I went through the apprenticeship process, there are all kinds of interesting things you learn about people and about how different cultures handle things, how different things. I mean, also in the back, I learned that I really enjoy several parts of the process of preparing the body. Mostly making them look really good. But also some more of the medical side of it. We can determine a lot about a person, how they passed away based on some of the processes. The aspiration, we remove the fluids from the lungs, and you know, they kind of feel like, oh, maybe now they can get a deep breath. It's kind of weird to think that, but you know, we can tell if there was fluid in the lungs. We can tell a number of things about the body and about the person, and that's really intrigued me. And I hope, I mean, through these processes, the body looks more natural than it did, and we can get an appearance that is close to, well, sometimes very, very close to what the family remembers seeing their loved one at, and allow them to spend their last moments of not or remembering the cold and the sterile environment of the hospital or the nursing home, but seeing their loved one in their favorite suit, or I think bathrobe was one of my favorites, where she would always wear pajamas. So we put her in her favorite pajamas. That's what she would have done. She would have been walking around. That's how she would have slept, in her pajamas like that. To allow people to have that, because there's a lot of, I've noticed here, with, I'm sure you all have heard of, a lot of people are going toward cremation. It's easier, it's cheaper. It depends on what you do. There are a lot of funeral homes, well, they offer all kinds of things, but the one that they offer all of the services of funeral and then the cremation, which I think if you're going to go that route's the best route. A lot of people just want to get it over and done with. So they're continually pushing that grief even farther, because there is no acknowledgement, there is no time spent with their loved one. So they just poof and gone. And that's going to have its own box of worms to deal with. I think it's very, very important to spend that time to be able to work through and be present with the body, as opposed to just send them off and come back. We got off on a tangent. Sorry.
No, that's okay. So you're going after your license?
I'm going after my license. Yes, I attend a couple of classes at UCO. They have a mortuary science program, and it's the only one in the state. So I had to go there. But you know, there's a part of me that's really interested in the medical side of it. And who knows? We'll see. I got plenty of time to decide.
This won't be your last stop.
No,
I don't think.
If anything, I'll come up with something else.
It sure sounds like it. Well, is there anything else we need to cover that we haven't asked already? You got most of my list. We need to. You're not from Dewey, so you don't.
I'm not.
So there's probably not much. I mean, do you know much of the history of Dewey, or?
Well, I know that Tom Mix was here. This is very important because of Tom Mix, and they have a museum for him here.
Yeah.
Bartlesville itself is one of the oldest towns in Oklahoma, and ConocoPhillips is here. Has been here for a very long time.
And we drove through the cemetery to see Henry Starr.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to go back and figure out who exactly he was, but he had an interesting headstone.
In fact, the Dewey Cemetery up here has the original Bartles family in it. They have a big mausoleum there.
We saw that too. Have you thought of the alma mater yet? No. We'll give up on that one, huh?
I'm sure I could think of it. I knew the first line, but because Humble line's the second line.
We should know it too because they play it. The tune is on the library bell tower at noon every day. It doesn't matter.
Sorry, I thought I had it too.
We'll make it our homework too.
I think you're right. I think the first lines are proud and immortal. Bright shine your name. Yeah.
All right, then, if there's nothing else, we'll say thank you very much for talking with
Well.
us today. It's been a pleasure.
Hope I've shared enough stories for you.
You were great. Thank you.